What's he see? What's he see?
He heard something. Let's get back in the house. Now!
It's gonna be okay.
Kill me!
Welcome. Yes, we are back once again. Horror Fiend TV's The Night That Welcomes Horror. Here, ready, and man, this is going to be interesting. I want to talk about because this guy is not a big A24 fan, and I seem to be watching a lot of A24 movies lately, which doesn't bite so well. But hey, you know, sometimes you have to eat crow, and sometimes you just got to admit when you're wrong. But maybe I won't do it this time. Anyways, I am joined here with my co-host, author extraordinaire. Please support this guy. He has a lot of books coming out this year, and listen, I'm still trying to get through one chapter, and this guy just drops more books. I'm not. I know what that Martin felt like, the guy who basically wrote Game of Thrones. Where he sat down with Stephen King and said, "Listen, I can't even finish a book, but you keep pumping out a lot of books, and I don't know how he does it." How are you, my boy Radar?
I'm great. You know, it helps to not have kids. That's certainly what I would say. And don't hang out with people.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, I got 4 more years till my daughter is out of the house, maybe. So, you know, but I plan on 2026 and I'll be done with school, and I plan on doing a lot of stuff in 2026. But let's talk about this interesting movie. It Comes at Night. Now, like I said, I didn't know this was an A24 film. And as I'm watching, I'm started thinking, all right, this is an A24 film. Even before, 'cause I kind of missed the opening, like just the
Right.
credit with A24. But yeah, this
It's
film
got
is
the
different.
vibe.
It
Got the vibe.
does. It
You
does.
know?
There's one thing I'll talk about at the end, which I'm glad that they didn't do, and I thought they were gonna do it, but I'll talk about it at the end. But with any movie, especially A24 or any slow burn movie in general, the opening sequences are the ones that really pull you in because a lot of A24 films are story driven. And
Yes.
this one had an interesting opening sequence, how it just pulls you right in. And I gotta ask you about it. I mean, what did you think about the opening sequence? To the point where Sarah is sitting in bed with Paul, and he tells her, like, you know, everything's gonna be okay, which is, I'm sorry, as a guy, that is our go-to.
That is
Even
the
if we
go-to
don't, yeah, even if we don't believe it
default.
ourselves, yeah, we are gonna tell you that regardless. But the fact that he told her everything's gonna be all right, and she looked at him and goes, "You really believe that?" But like, what did you think about that opening sequence of this film?
Like you said, it's A24 does that where it's like, oh, it's all character driven, and they do have to just really make sure that opening scene really hits you. And it does that with this one, you know, and it sets things up fairly well for what, you know, is comes. I feel like if you had been thrown into it without that opening scene, 90% of people would just turn it off after like 20 minutes, you know. Ugh, God. And it's, I mean, because the rest of the movie kind of does have that very slow tedious pace. So it's nice that the opening sequence is there and that it really does set the tone in a good way for what comes next. You know, and I'm wondering what are your thoughts on kind of Sarah's reaction to her husband like saying that and stuff? Because I mean, it seems like that's fair, you know, him going, yeah, it'll be all right. I don't think so, bud. I don't think
What?
so.
No, because you know, I mean, that opening sequence where you have now, I don't remember when's the last time a film opened with somebody breathing heavily, and that
Oh
kind of
yeah,
threw
I
me off.
can't
'Cause I
think.
thought, I was like, all right, is this a sex scene that's about to pop up? But it wasn't. But you know, you have that opening sequence with basically grandfather, the grandfather's sick, and they basically take him out. They lay him down. Not, well, I'll get more into this later, but they lay him down. They take him out into the woods, and basically, by the time he gets into the woods, they put a bullet in his head. Paul does, and then like not for nothing. One credit I give this movie is like, man, those fires they lit when they were basically burning bodies, that fire sparked fast. I mean, it was,
Yeah.
but to go from that to like laying in bed, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, when she said, "Do you really believe that?" I mean, the guy can't say no. I mean, so he's kind of
Right.
stuck with like I have to believe it because I'm hoping that everything's gonna be okay. Which you get a lot of what I like about this film in a way is I like films that use a lot of imagery,
Right.
and
This film certainly
this
does that.
this one
Yes,
does, and the way they show the imagery how it leads to the next basically chapter of sequence in this movie. But like for example, there's one sequence where we get it's like this painting, what appears to be like apocalyptic,
yeah.
and and they really took their time to show the entire painting, and then it goes translates to like down the hallway, and like what did you think of that transition from the painting to the red door, which we'll talk about a little bit more in depth in a
Right.
few minutes?
I mean, because you can definitely have your criticisms of this movie. I'm sure a good chunk of people do. Those who don't like elevated horror, this ain't it, buddy. This is not your movie. But I mean, it does such a good job with the imagery in this film too. And you put it spot on. That painting to the hallway and the red door is just like the perfect use of it, and it's more subtextual than anything. You got to read between the lines to to kind of draw your own conclusions. And I like that the movie certainly, and we'll talk about it more later too with other parts, but it certainly never holds your hand. It's like we're doing our own thing. We are telling a story. We're not giving you any cliff notes here. You got to figure it out on your own. What do you think of that though? The use of imagery and just like hardly any detail really described of what in the heck is going on.
I liked it because, like you said, they're not holding your hand,
No
and
way.
I like the way they guide you, even though that they're not holding your hand, they're still guiding you into a certain direction. The fact that I'll mention it now, we have no backstory, whatever, with what happened in the world. All
Yeah,
we know is
none.
people were getting sick, and the fact that they show that apocalyptic painting added to it because it was this one thing where you're wondering why they even brought up the image, but later on, as the movie continues, you understand what that image was really about. And then
Right.
the transition to the red door, which always, I mean, let's be honest, red, stop, danger, that's usually the color of things like that. But the
Right.
fact that you get the transition to that door, and then later on you find out exactly why that door one. I mean, I wonder, did they paint it red on purpose, or was it like that when they were in the house? I mean, the
Maybe they
fact
like the
that
Rolling Stones. Who knows?
I mean, yeah, it was just like weird, and the locks, and not for no, not if you have that many locks on the door and somebody's still able to kick it down. I mean, don't you
Yeah.
think you want to put a little bit more locks in?
Maybe a few more, just a couple, especially based on like the danger that is lurking there. And I do really honestly enjoy the aspect of like that it does have faith in the audience, because with there's so many apocalyptic movies we have seen, and like a lot of the times, post-apocalyptic, they're like, here's exactly what happened, let's give it to you in force-fed flashbacks, or we just show you at the beginning of the movie. And this one's like, no, you just gotta use your imagination, deal with it, and figure it out for yourself. And I think that's really cool and interesting. I don't think you need to necessarily describe exactly what happened to get to an apocalypse. I think it's also an interesting story to just focus on what happens after. And this movie does that great. And I think it may be more like being at a bowling alley, and like you have the guide rails up, but it's not telling you do it right here.
Yeah.
Go right here. It's more like we'll help guide you along with a few little notes and hints, like the painting or the imagery in the background, but nothing too wild.
No, I think this film, the fact that it had, I mean, you are massive fans of ambiguity,
I love ambiguity.
and this film had it so much that honestly, I didn't even want to be told of what happened. I
Right.
mean, the little glimpses we get, I mean, we understand that there was the sickness and people were sick and people were like escaping. And for some reason, it's always going to the woods in isolation, which I love the fact that they went into
Yeah.
isolated area because that I thought that brought a lot more to the film. The fact
Right.
that there's something out there, but the fact that you're in the middle of nowhere, it could be anything. It could be like Paul mentioned. We don't know if we'll talk about scene later, but we don't know if this pet was attacked by like an
Right.
animal or what it was. But I like the fact that there was that unknown factor of what was in the woods because you sensed it, but the fact that you didn't see it, I love the fact that this film took that
Oh
route.
yeah. Yeah, it took a note from Jaws, which, where you hardly ever see the shark and went, well, let's just take it to the extreme and just go, you'll never see it. I love that too so much that it just leaves you going, "Yeah, maybe it was some raiders, who are just like, uh-oh, there's a dog here. Let's take care of that, or like you said, maybe it was an animal, or maybe there was some creature lurking in the woods. And yeah, I think that like just certainly mankind too, as we've gone more modern, I'll be the first to admit I wouldn't do good in the wilderness. That's just fair. And there's this element, this like scary element of we're out of touch with it anyways,
Yeah.
but just this element that there is something out there in the woods and you could never know what, and it will get you, is something that just really adds to the ambiance of this, as opposed to like other post-apocalyptics where it's like, let's put it in the middle of a city, or even like with a quiet place, it's like on a farm, but there's like a lot of still modern stuff littered around the area, and they can like see their neighbors. But in this one, it is the woods. It is the
Yeah.
woods.
And the funny thing is, like Paul, all that don't go out at night. This fucker kept going out at night most of the time. I'm like, dude, I'm
What are you
like,
doing?
seriously, man? Yeah, what the hell are you doing, man? And there's one scene where he was where they first we get introduced to the Will character who's trying to break into the house, and we'll later
Right.
find out a little bit more about him. But he knocks the guy out, asks him, "Are you by yourself?" The guy says, "Yeah," then knocks him out anyways, and then goes to the woods. I'm like, dude, why? I mean, you just drag him in there and just freaking lock the door. But
Right.
later on in the film, the people in this house is Paul, Sarah, and their son Travis. And later on, the person who broke into the film is Will, and we find out that Will has now. There's certain things about Will, the Will character, that kind of left you wondering if he was telling the truth the whole time.
Right.
But the fact that he had a wife, Kim, and their son, Andrew, and eventually they convinced Paul, because Sarah was the one that pushed it a little bit more, have them come stay with us because they have more food. The dude had 2 goats and chickens. I mean, how he got the 2 goats and chickens
No.
is beyond me, but well, what a smart guy, man. But as the movie starts building up a little bit between all these characters, there was one character that I found a little interesting now, Travis, who was 17-year-olds at the time. And if you watch this movie, comment below, don't you think that Travis wanted Kim? I mean, you kind of seen that a little bit, even though,
Just a little.
yeah. I mean, he dreamed about it and everything. But the thing about the Travis character that I found interesting, and I think this is like the one area in the film where I felt like they took I'm not gonna say it's paranormal, but it felt like
Right.
something along those lines where Travis would have these visions, these dreams almost every night that he he couldn't sleep because of these. But I mean, what did you think of all these visions and dreams he was having, and how they align with basically what was happening during the movie?
Right. I feel like, again, this is a slow burn. I feel like we'll touch on it again and again throughout this video, but it is a slow burn, and these dreams, these weird visions, add a little bit more to it. They're more interesting than just like the day to day that they're doing in the other scenes and stuff, where it's just them talking. And I like that psychological element to it too. You get a dive into Travis and what he's kind of going through subconsciously. I don't know, how do you feel about necessarily like dream sequences in horror movies? Is this something that you like feel was right for the movie, or and overall in general, like how do you feel about normally dream sequences showing up in a horror movie?
I'm not a big fan of them unless
That's fair.
they find a way to tie into the film. I mean, if they just happen to happen and then it has no connection to the film, or it just feels like irrelevant, like if it's a filler.
Right.
But for some reason, I didn't mind it in this film because I felt like it kind of explained why he had such a tough time sleeping. The fact that he was scared to dream, that he was scared of things that he was seeing.
Right.
And like, not for nothing. I mean, I'd be scared too if I'm having a dream and I'm the grandfather that we just put a bullet in his head shows up right next to your bed, and he's just like this shit coming out of his mouth. And then for some reason, he's having what you thought was going to be, a wet dream with Kim, and all of a sudden she starts spewing shit from the mouth.
Right.
So it's almost like as the dreams happen, you kind of got a glimpse of what might happen to Travis himself, especially the last dream he had.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Really spend out, all the stuff because of things that happen later in the film. But
right.
I wanted to ask you a quick question before we continue because this bothered me a little bit. Now, you're Paul and some stranger who basically you're trying to protect your family and stuff.
Right.
Stranger breaks into the house and he gives you basically a sob story. And your wife and your child are basically, yay, let's bring them in. I mean,
right.
Being the world they live in, would you have caved in like Paul did?
God, that's so tough because obviously you and I have not been in this situation. I hope we aren't ever in this situation either. I mean, that's the good part about these like post-apocalyptic films too, is that there's just, the world isn't black and white. And these types of movies show that perfectly, especially with like Paul and his decision. He did cave a little too fast though, I'll admit. I'm on the side of lean to caved a little too fast. Now his wife and son, they caved quick, lickety split.
Oh yeah.
Oh my goodness. And it's, I wonder, do you feel like your wife would do the same thing in that situation? Would you go like, let's go invite this dude and his family into our house? Do they?
Oh hell no! Shoot, but listen, we gotta take care of our own. I'm not gonna have strangers in the house. I mean, we don't know these people. Look at the world we live in. We don't know if they're sick. And my wife's a nurse, so she would have been freaking looking at them the whole time, trying to see if they were sick or not. So yeah, no, I think the route I probably would. I'm like, listen, bro, I'll drop you off at the house,
right?
And I'll swim by every once in a while, pick up eggs and stuff. If you want to, I'll trade you some water,
like some bartering system. But...
yeah, I would. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. You're not coming to my house, man. I mean, I don't know you. I mean, all right, I'm sorry the world's gone to hell in a handbasket, but listen, I gotta protect my family. So I'll get some goat milk. I'll give you some water and stuff in trade, but. Yeah, nah, my wife would.
Yeah.
No way. I mean, do you think your wife would have?
No. My wife is also not very social to begin with. So if like her prerogative is someone comes live with us or not, she's always going to pick not. Even, it today, like no way. So even without the stress of, hey, it's a post-apocalyptic sort of thing, she'd be saying no anyways. I feel, and it's like, like you said, they could just barter. They could just barter, you know?
I mean, I would have. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
no. Yeah, I mean, unless it's like Will passed away and something happened. Will they'd be like, hey, you want me to go pick up Kim and the kid? Yeah, I'll bring them over.
right, like,
Like,
oh, we have this healthy kind of relationship for at least a few years or something where it's like we know this family, as opposed to, hey, this dude broke in. Uh, you know, how should we open, relations with him? I'll just bring him in. Just
yeah,
have him
Jesus
come
Christ.
aboard.
And then there was that scene where he's bringing them back to the house, and those two guys end up, like one guy ends up like firing at the pickup truck. And Paul
Right.
crashes. They ends up killing one guy, and Will's beating the crap out of the other guy.
Yeah.
And then Paul shoots the guy, and Will goes, "What are you doing? Why'd you?" But Paul told him, "Dude, you act like you know him." So there was a lot of things about Will that I'm like, this. And
Yeah,
there was the other scene where they're sitting there drinking, and he mentioned Will goes, "Yeah, I was a single child." He goes, "Hold up, but did you say something before about brothers?" Oh no, my brother-in-law, he's like a brother to me. I'm like, there was just something about which I like
Right.
the fact that they didn't go in depth with it. They just kind of they tease you with it. So as you're watching, you're like, all right, what the hell is something really up with Will, or is Paul just overreacting to every little thing because he has trust
Right.
issues?
Yeah, because like some of that stuff with like that Will says, or does, you could see it both ways, where it's just like baby Will doesn't want to shoot a dude in the head, type deal. He's just a little more hesitant. Or yeah, oops, he just has spent years calling his brother-in-law his brother or something. Stuff like that where it's like, yeah, I can totally get where this is a normal reaction, but at the same time, post-apocalyptic circumstances that it is, yeah, I understand Paul being skeptical. And in real life too, like modern day now, if someone was like, yeah, my brother, and it's like, "But aren't you an only kid?" And they're like, oh yeah, sorry, my brother-in-law. I would be, that's weird anyways. So yeah, I could see it both ways. It makes total sense. And you're right, the more ambiguity going in there, and they just never tell you which way to go. And I feel like other maybe less well-handled movies would 100% throw like, look at this letter I found from you, Will,
Yeah.
that lays out you're the bad guy or something, and just
Look at
not
this.
handle
Yeah,
it correctly.
look at this picture you've been carrying. Who are all these people? Stuff like
Yeah,
that.
something like that just points it out point blank, and it's like, okay, come on. But that never happens in this one. Never happens.
Now there's another character in this film, Stanley, which happens to be the dog. Who every time he barked, they told him to shut up, which doesn't make sense to me because they didn't let the dog bark because you figure whatever's coming will go away, or if it's coming, basically you shoot it and kill it. But
Right.
there's a scene where they're all out basically working. Like Kim and Sarah are working by the windows. They're working in the farmhouse with the eggs. I mean, the chickens get probably grabbing eggs. You got basically Paul and Will and Travis outside basically working. It looks like at the time Will was moving logs. Then you get Stanley, which is the beautiful dog, which was
Yeah.
barking, and then he takes off, and then Travis takes off with him. Which I know it's your dog and all, man, but there's something out there, man. You just don't go chasing after your dog. And the kid looked like he can't fire a gun for anything.
Right.
So then you hear basically he approaches where Stanley is. You hear the barking, and then you don't hear barking anymore. You hear like a crunch. So they go back into the house. Paul's pissed off. Don't you ever chase after, the dog. Stanley's gonna be all right. Will was ready to go find out what the hell it was, which
Right.
I liked. Once again, I like the fact that he didn't go. That Paul was like, "Come on, it's dangerous. Basically, ignore what's out here." But we see Travis basically falling apart because of what happened to Stanley, the unknown to what happened to Stanley. Then all of a sudden,
Right.
we get this incident where Travis hears noises and basically he goes to the red door. Door is open and there's Stanley, a bloody Stanley. Now, prior to that, Travis, who once again he doesn't sleep, so he walks around at night half the time. Which
Right.
I'm sorry, man. If there's shit outside, I'm not gonna be walking around the house. I'm gonna
No
stay in
way.
my room. I mean, color, draw, do some other stuff. But he sees Andrew, which I think Andrew was like what 5, 6 years old. They didn't really say how old he was.
Yeah, they don't think they did. No.
So he's like walking around the house, and Travis takes him back into the room. And once he gets into the bed, he makes sure. I mean, I don't know if he peeped this. He made sure he got one last look at Kim before he closed the door. I'm
You
gonna
just
keep
gotta make
harping
sure.
on that because yeah, I mean he want to make sure she was comfortable. But you know, and then when they tell Travis tells Paul, his dad that somebody's in the house and they find Stanley, there's a whole mystery of who opened the door.
Right. Which again, it just adds more to it. It just adds more to it
Yeah.
of like things are already kind of you're questioning a lot of stuff, and then the red door happens, and it's like, okay, this is a whole other level. And I think it's a really good job of showing like the paranoia of Paul, but kind of all the others too, because they can't
Yeah.
necessarily trust each other anyways. As we have explained, it was not the best scenario to let this random family move in with you. You know, and so I feel like the opening of that red door and like, who the hell did this? It just adds, it's a nice little escalation to it. I wonder, do you think there could have been some other type of event that would have also fit well for that part to kind of escalate the paranoia a bit?
No, I kind of like the fact that they left it like that because
Mhm.
the only person, and this is the mystery too, and this is something that it, only Paul had the key to go in and out of that door.
Right.
And but I like the fact that the one person you would have thought to have the permission only to open the door is Paul. And the fact that it was somebody else besides him that opened
Right.
that door, I think it helped escalate things even more because it was his house, his rules. And
Right.
it was like somebody broke the rules and then Andrew got blamed. Poor little kid got blamed for it. In which
Right.
Will goes, he can't even reach the dock. Which it made you wonder a little bit more who exactly opened the door. If it
Right.
wasn't, yeah, if it wasn't the kid, Andrew. But yeah, things really escalate after that. I mean, this is where the movie really takes its twist. What did you think about the twist of the events after the door?
Right. Of like just everything kind of devolving from there.
Yeah,
I think, because again, slow burn. I think this is the right way to kind of bring her on home. Which I'm not talking about the ending yet, but like, kind of to get to that nice meaty bit that, us American audiences want. Uh, we want some of that stuff in here. Especially that sort of the twist of the relationships and stuff. What do you think about it though?
I I didn't see it coming. Like you kind of had a feeling that Paul was already not really comfortable. And I
Right.
felt like a lot of the stuff was because the way Will was around Travis, where he was helping him out, all do this, do this. So he was almost like I feel like he was almost stepping into that father type role
Hmm.
because he was teaching him how to cut the log, cut the logs, to get the firewood. He
Right.
was constantly teaching them different things. And this led to where Paul basically pulled Will to the side and to have that drink to really find out a little bit more about him. But I like the fact that it's almost simple, but it felt very intriguing the way they put it together. I mean, if you
Right.
think about it, it's like somebody trying to open a door, and then here you have Will trying to get his family. Now, this is where as to the twist, the fact that they're wondering who touched Stanley first. Was it Travis or was it Andrew? And the fact that Paul made a decision for both families to isolate, which
Yeah.
now this is causing more of a like like troubles because you're forcing both families to go to isolation. And this is where Travis, who listen, this kid had some boredom issues. I mean, to go into the attic just to crawl to certain spots so he could hear things, which
Right.
was a little. You're like, dude. I mean, come on, some privacy.
Yeah.
You got some boundaries, and you're breaking all the boundaries. But the fact that we start hearing Andrew coughing, we start now. This is the one thing that adds to the basically the way Paul is. The fact that it doesn't really say whether or not Andrew had whatever infection or sickness was going on.
Right.
All it said he was sick. Now, granted, there's one scene where Kim's holding him outside, and you see like his hairline look like it was receding a little bit, but you just weren't
Right.
sure.
You
But
can't tell.
you can't, and I love the fact that they never showed it either. I mean, you
Nope.
want to explain to what really happened the last conflict between both families?
Oh no, I'll leave it to you. I feel like you're better at describing what happens in the movies, anyways.
All right. All right. So after hearing Andrew coughing and crying, Travis wakes up Sarah and Paul, and he tells them that I think Andrew's sick.
Right.
So Sarah, now mind you, this is how quickly people turn. Sarah, who was the one that convinced Paul to bring the family over, basically says we got to get rid of them, and they can't take nothing because they know where we live at. They'll come back. We have to get rid of them
Right.
because they're all sick. Now she's the one that started putting it into Paul's head.
Yeah.
This is where Travis goes, well, if Andrew's sick, I'm sick too. And then Sarah goes, no, you're fine. You're not sick. So they go and there's a confrontation where all Will wants to do is take whatever he thinks is fair, which is half the food, which I agree with him. It was fair, and they were going to leave.
Right.
But Sarah didn't want them to leave because, let's be honest, Sarah wanted to basically kill them
Yes.
so they could keep the food.
Which
But then go outside. There's basically, there's a big fight. They knock out Will. They bring him outside. Will starts beating the shit out of Paul when he wakes up. Sarah shoots Will in the back, which is ironic, the fact that she shot him in the back.
yes.
And then, as Kim is running with Andrew in her hands, Paul pulls the trigger. Instead of hitting Kim, kills Andrew and eventually kills Kim. And then Will passes away. I mean, like, it happened so quickly, that the chaos and stuff. But
Right.
so what do you do to think of how everything just basically crumbled like that?
Right. I mean, it seems like, the violence and stuff, it seems so just natural, like how it would actually happen, because it's like all it takes is 2-3 bullets, and there a lot of conflicts end like that, And I feel like the escalation to it's like what we talked about with that atmosphere and that environment and the imagery and the glimpse into Travis's psyche. That's what we only see Travis's dreams, but I'm sure, his parents are not having nice little relaxing doozy, they're going through their own nightmare hellscape or whatever. And so I feel like, they're just frayed mentally, and just this one little stress adds on top and then kind of explodes. I want to inquire, do you think that their actions were justified in some way?
See, I
know it's a tough question to ask.
I honestly don't think their actions were justified, because I think they should just let them go.
That's fair.
And I think the fact that Sarah was the one who is basically the architect of everything that happened.
Right.
How the fact that she was so quick to take away her own humanity and turn cold-blooded. And then after they're all dead, she's fucking crying and shit. I mean, this was your idea.
This was her.
it was all her.
All her.
And Paul's just the one that pulled the trigger on 2 because she's the one that technically killed Will. But I would let them go. I mean, they did nothing wrong while they were there, in my eyes, to deserve to be basically executed. And that's what they were executed.
Right.
You know, do I think that Andrew was definitely sick? Well, yeah. After you see what happens at the end, he was sick. And,
Yeah.
you know, and like I said, there's that scene where she's holding him outside and you see his hairline is totally receding. So you know he's infected. But the fact that it was just like it showed you what happens to humanity in a post-apocalyptic environment. We see it in a lot of movies like this too,
Right.
where basically you have to survive and by all means, and you take everybody up. But I just didn't feel like I felt like the Andrew killing was mercy killing,
Mhm.
you know, but to kill them all, like nah.
Yeah. Just slaughter them all. Because there's a good chance that, Will and God, what is it? Kim could be perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be perfectly fine. And you know what? Let them go home and grieve the loss of their fucking child, man.
Yeah.
Let
I
them
mean,
go. And plus, while they were there, they helped out. They did stuff. They weren't dead weight.
Yeah.
Besides Will saying a few things that were like, maybe a little sketchy. But other than that, it's like, last time I checked, you don't shoot someone for being sketchy. Otherwise, there's a lot of people in the city of Wichita who would be getting gunned down. I won't lie. But I mean, I have to agree with you. It's not like I remember watching it for the first time and going like, man, Sarah sucks.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And at the end, I'm like, why couldn't it have been Sarah? Why couldn't it have been Sarah? And my brother-in-law was he was definitely more adamant about it. He was like, damn it should have been her. So
yeah, she played the victim, but she was the architect of everything that happened.
yeah, everything. She was the catalyst for all of it. And it's a kind of, she did get her comeuppance in a way. And it's, it's one of those like I love bleakness. I love a good bleak ending, and this is one of them. This is
that ending.
This is one of them, man. This is one of them.
I love that ending because everything came full circle, and I love movies that, like I did recently, Monsters for Beyond Our World,
Mhm.
and the fact that the way the movie starts is basically the way the movie ends.
Right.
And this
That's
one was
symmetry.
yes, and this one was kind of the same thing where you have her basically talking to her, father about, let it go, almost like you could relax now, and then she's telling the same thing to Travis, who, lo and behold, he was right. He's sick too.
Whoops.
And she fucked up. But
Yep.
the fact that, that ending where it's just Paul and Sarah sitting on the table with an empty chair that used to be where Travis sits. I mean, I agree. That was like when that happened, I'm sitting there like, all right. And then the movie just ends.
Right. It's done. And again, there's no hand holding. It's just, this is the end. Boom. And I think there is, I feel like the way it was marketed too, because I remember it being marketed as more of there's like, oh no, it's this typical post-apocalyptic, like there's some kind of creature lurking about. And with that title too, It Comes at Night, it makes you think that it's more of kind of the same that you've been expecting. And this movie isn't that. It's not that in any way, shape, or form. So I remember watching it the first time and it gets to the end and going like, what the hell? Stupid. This is dumb. I really did not like it on a first watch, but this is kind of back because I watched it when it first came out. So that was back when I wasn't really doing my writing and putting symbolism into things and thinking about more stuff more critically, kind of that artistic point. And now that I've been doing that and going back and rewatching it, it's like, yes, it's a slow burn. It is a slow burn. I get that. It's not everyone's cup of tea, but the elements and the imagery and the atmosphere and kind of the perfect situation to kind of describe like people, that the beats of the story are really well done.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to see what you think. So this ending, do you believe this ending was the way to go, or do you think it would be more brutal if it was revealed that one or both of them were infected?
I love this ending. I
Yeah.
love it. I feel like they ended it at the perfect time in the film. They need to show us them shoot Travis in the head. We didn't need to see any of that. We didn't need to know if one of them was sick or not,
Right.
because the assumption is one of them is probably sick. Which I'm hoping is Sarah, because she deserves to go.
Right.
I'm not blaming Paul for anything, because Paul did what he thought was best. But yes, Sarah's. I didn't want to know anything else about her, but I like the fact that they chose this path, because, like you said, it is a slow burn, but the movie basically shows you the real horror is not what's out there, so it's within the house, within all those people living together,
Right.
with this worry of what's out there. And this is another thing I love about this film. Talk about the ambiguity. It's called It Comes at Night, right? And every time Travis would walk that hall where the red doors at the end, you were waiting for something to come.
Right.
Every single time.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that you were hoping to see something, but you didn't see something because it wasn't needed to be shown. The
Right.
fact that this movie did an amazing job. Cinematography was awesome. The tensions that it was creating, the moods it was creating. When there was light outside, most of the time they were basically living life,
Right.
living what they could do. And then once they get into the house, it's complete darkness inside the house. So I like the fact that they took every single possible route to basically make you feel the isolation and make you wonder what you would like. Most of the conversation we're having right now is what would we do in this situation, which, as you're watching the film, I love the fact that it made me think, well, all right, would I do this? Would I do that? Would I do this
Right. What
differently?
would I do different?
And I love the fact that we hear the crunching sound of, we're assuming something was eating Stanley. We don't know what it was, but the fact that later on, when Travis is walking the hall and there's banging on the door, that's where we were wondering, all right, whatever killed Stanley, is that behind the door?
Right.
Because it's not for nothing. That banging sound doesn't lead me to believe it was Stanley trying to get inside. And that's another
probably
piece
not.
of ambiguity. Because
You
you're
know.
assuming something else is bad. Like, what did you think was banging on the door?
I thought, like I said, the first time I watched it, I was like, here's the monster. Fucking finally. Here it comes. No. Or if it was, tough luck. It's not going to be definitive. And I love that about the movie. It's never definitive about anything except for a few things, just enough to not make everything completely confusing. Like, oh, yes, it does tell you, yeah, Andrew was sick, but we need you to know that for this. And I feel like, as I was because the reason I brought up that question to you was because I was like, would it be even bleaker if one of them was also sick? And I think the answer is no. I think they just have to live now. And I think that's even like, one, you have to live with the fact that you had to put down your own child. That is brutal in of itself. But I think the other fact too is that there's going to be a divide between Paul and Sarah now.
Oh yeah.
There's this. I cannot imagine a scenario where Paul just is like, all right, let's just move on from this. There's going to be some resentment towards Sarah, and Sarah is going to have guilt. I just feel like that's the bleakest way possible because their marriage is fractured forever. And it's, and just to live with the guilt of their son being gone and they're alone now in this world. That is one of the bleakest endings I think you can give. Besides maybe Martyrs, the French movie. That's probably the bleakest. Probably the bleakest.
That fucking movie. That movie's good.
That movie's so good.
That movie's so good. Yeah, I agree with what you're saying though. And like as you're talking about this, and look at some of that, like the ironic things in this film, how they came full circle. Now they're sitting at the end, basically them alone. Beginning of the movie, she's like, he goes, everything's gonna be okay. And I'm thinking in my mind, she's probably sitting there, motherfucker, you told me everything's gonna be okay.
Right.
And all this shit happened.
Oops.
And the fact that once again, Sarah, the only time she showed emotion was when something was her fault.
Ooh,
and the reason I'm saying that was because there's a scene where, now this is after we see a moment of intimacy between Will and Kim, where it goes to Paul and Sarah, and he's like trying to get her attention. He puts his head on her lap, and she's like reading a book, and he moves the book to the side, and she just, all right, put her hand on him like nothing.
Yeah.
So the more you think about it, the more fucking cold-hearted she was, man.
Yeah, I mean, and it makes you kind of wonder what kind of a person Sarah was before the apocalypse. But yeah, I gotta agree with you. That's probably the best kind of ending this film could have had. And they did a good job. And again, I gotta say, this isn't for everyone. Certainly not for everyone, but the people who like those slow burns, those A24 lovers, which not necessarily there's overlap either. No. You can, you love good slow burn, but you don't necessarily like A24. And I feel that same way too. Not every A24 film lands, but this one also hits a different note too, because it came out just a couple years before COVID, and we kind of got to see some of the things that happen in it play out with our families and stuff. So that's kind of wild too.
Yeah, the only thing about this film is, I'm not a big A24 person. I love slow burns. The last two films I watched from A24, I'll admit I enjoyed, which is this one, Because of Night, and then Heretics. I love story character driven films, and this one did a good job of giving us enough of each character to make us kind of care for some of the characters. Now, I like the character Will. I liked Kim. Andrew. He was the kid. He was just
he's
there
a kid.
He's a kid. Paul, I didn't mind. Sarah, I just
could not
get
stand
on my nerves. Yeah, I couldn't stand her. Travis was interesting. The fact that he was basically died at the end was interesting, because most of these films they would not kill him off. They wouldn't have killed him off.
Yeah,
they would probably killed her off, which honestly I kind of like the bleakness and the karma, the fact that he died.
Right.
But yeah, this film is definitely an interesting film. Yeah, it definitely is not for everybody. But I gotta say, I really did enjoy this film because of the fact that the ambiguity in this film, and I had no interest in knowing what the hell was the apocalypse and what the sickness was. I didn't care for it, and the way this movie was done, you didn't have to care for it because it was irrelevant of how they got there. It's now it's all right. This is the present. This is where we're at. Let's go from here. But yeah, I mean, any last thoughts on this one before we wrap up?
Yeah, I mean, my recommendation for anyone who hasn't heard about this and wants to go into it, just don't think about it. Like, don't set any expectations for what you think the film is going to be. Just go into it and just kind of have a blank mind doing it, because, I learned the hard way watching it, thinking it was going to be a typical creature feature that no, it is not. And just keep that, or just keep in mind that it's not going to be a creature feature. It's not going to be that kind of film. I feel like that's my closing thoughts on this one. But it's a solid watch.
Oh, it's a very solid watch. And for me, I would say if you're an author looking or writer looking for a film to use as a way, if you're into post-apocalyptic films, use this one as a blueprint to how you want to write certain stories, because this one I think did it just enough to build characters, did just enough to give you a glimpse, a feeling of the world they're living in, and the fact that this film had a lot of imagery and symbolism in there. So there's a lot of elements of good story writing in this film.
For sure.
So definitely, if you're looking, if you're a post-apocalyptic writer, this is one film I recommend you watch, because it's always that thing is was it don't show tell.
Right.
And this did a good job at telling the story and not showing unnecessary things that you needed to see. But yeah, overall, it is a solid watch. It is one of those hidden gems in the A24 library, but definitely watch this film. I don't think it's streaming because I had to rent it, so I
Dang.
don't think it's streaming right now. But definitely watch. I gotta add it to my collection, so I gotta basically I gotta buy the DVD for it. But yeah, definitely watch it. Yeah, the next episode of Night Welcomes Horror, we're gonna talk about little Easter bunnies.
We're going in the exact opposite direction.
Yeah, we're going from good storytelling to what the fuck are we watching? But that's the fun thing about movies and stuff. And sometimes you just, I mean, we're talking about fucking killer rabbits, so that's going to be an interesting one to talk about, especially around Easter time. So
Oh yeah.
hopefully, this is not what you're thinking of an Easter bunny is, but for us, it is our Easter bunny because we're horror fans. But yeah, until next time, that's my boy Radar, JR, the Night Welcomes Horror here on Horror Fiend TV. Don't forget, like, subscribe, and share. We got more coming your way. And wow, I can't wait till you guys see the next episode. Fucking rabbits. Till next
Hell
time,
yeah.
peace.